This podcast is a B-Side Collections production.
Fertility ain't fair.
That's right.
So let's talk about it. Real, raw, unfiltered, with me, your friend in fertility.
Happy 2023 Fertility Ain't Fair community. I am your host, Britt. And if you are new to our space, well, welcome. Glad you have decided to join us on our conversations, our journeys, our stories in this beautiful new year. And if you are returning, well, welcome back. Look, I know we've all been through a lot. 2022 was giving a lot of different things for all of us and for different reasons. I know we had a really intense, crazy up and down journey last year in terms of our fertility journey. Of course, life is just lifing while you're doing all of this additional things to try to, conceive and have a baby. And we went through, 3 IVF cycles, a number of retrievals, a number of transfers. And did we come home with our miracle? No. Are we still in it to win it? Yes. But it was a lot. And I'm going to be honest in saying that I'm still processing what the hell happened last year. Like I said, life is, of course, lifing. But I think in terms of the fertility journey, I'm still processing all that we went through, because as we know, when you're doing back-to-back treatments or back-to-back cycles, you really a lot of times don't have time to really, take this all in. What happened? How do I feel? Where am I at? It's like, okay, on to the next one. Let's keep going. Let's talk about it. Let's figure it out. But you're constantly in motion trying to get to your ultimate goal. And I had to really just allow myself to reflect and have grace. And also, I'm being honest, I've been off with the podcast. We haven't had an episode in a while. I haven't been kind of doing my usual kind of flow with the episodes. And that's why, you guys. And so if you are joining us again for the first time, check out our Instagram page at Fertility Ain't Fair or our Facebook page. But also, learn more about like who I am, what we're doing here, etc. But just jump into any past episodes, jump in anywhere and connect. And, if you ever want to talk or reach out, please feel free to do so. But I'm just glad that we're here in the new year. I'm glad that I'm still standing. We are still standing, my husband and I, and we still have love and support. And I thank each and every one for being a part of our journey in some way or another. So with all that being said, this episode was previously recorded, and I was trying to wait for a certain time period to roll it out. But here we are now, because this information needs to get out. This is a great conversation I had with Jessie Spivey, who is a doula and the creator of the Doudad doula service. Yes. So in addition to being a doula, he's also the operations manager of the Oakland LGBTQ Center in Cali, and a co-facilitator for the Black Men Connect support group. So his whole mission is wrapped around amplifying the voices of masculine identified persons involved in birth and birth work. And his journey was inspired by his mom's work actually as a doula and pregnancy coach, as well as the infant mortality rates facing the Black community. So this was an amazing conversation. Please make sure you connect with him in the future, especially if you're in Cali or, in his area, at the Doudad on social and the doudad.com. But we had a really good conversation about things that have not been discussed on this show before. So without further ado, let's hop into this episode of Fertility Ain't Fair, Black Boy Doula Joy. Well, today I am, as you all know, super excited to have another amazing guest hopping into Fertility Ain't Fair to give us some good gems, some good words, and also educate us. We have Jessie hopping in. He is a full circle doula, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and we'll get into all of his good things. He is the creator of the Doudad doula service. And Jessie, welcome to Fertility Ain't Fair.
Thank you, Brittany. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy and excited to be here.
Me too. So I'll be honest, okay? So we're transparent here on Fertility Ain't Fair. And so I'm going to be honest in saying that a male doula never crossed my mind.
It never crossed my
Like
mind either. You
and yet
know,
here you are.
here I am. Here I am. Here I stand. Um,
Yes.
it's interesting when I started being connected to the work, I didn't even realize what was happening at the time because I was so young and
Hmm.
so, so far removed from from that thought process,
Hmm.
and so it wasn't until years later that I realized why all these things were happening in my life and aligning birth in my life, always
Hmm.
being at births around my family, always being around my
Mm.
mom when she was working, um, when I was in high school. And just feeling that connection, and not
Hmm.
just happening to be there, but wanting to be there.
Right.
And
And
so
yeah.
I was just going to say, and so I didn't understand why that was happening until much later in my life.
That's how it works, right? Like
Hmm.
things align and we have no idea how they're all going to connect. And then sometimes they just all come together in a beautiful way, which has clearly happened for you. Um, so, and it's not because, right, I didn't think that males could do it or any of those things. It was just because the majority of the public face, right, of doulas for so long have been women. And so I was happy to find you on social, connect. And then that's why I'm really glad for this conversation, to really educate everyone and kind of change that perception of having, diversity in the birth working and doula space. So we'll get into all of that good stuff in a second, but let's start at the top. And how I start every show with the guests is by asking you, how do you currently define yourself? What are the words or phrases that describe Jessie?
You know, when I think about that, for me, I just feel free. You
Mm,
know, I think for so long in my life, I had been held down by all these preconceived notions of what I should be doing, who I should
mm-hmm,
be having in my life and things like that. And I think
mm-hmm.
when I let all of that go and really just focused inward, I think that's when everything started changing for me.
And when do you think that happened? When do you feel like if I would have asked you that same question a decade ago, like how would your answer have been different?
Honestly, I feel like it's a gradual process, and every year, even as we currently speak, I feel like every year there's just a layer
Hmm.
that we shed and become kind of like a new person.
Hmm.
Kind of like a metamorphosis.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a good feeling to have. I
Absolutely. And
mean,
it's not even
yeah.
like a new person per se, but it just
Hmm.
there's a new part of us that emerges, or we find new parts or re-emerge parts of ourselves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love that. And so in your IG, you said that you're spreading Black Boy Joy. What does that mean to you? Like that means something different to everybody. So for you, what does that mean?
For me, at the end of the day, um, that's who I am, and that's who I'm seen as. That's the first thing people will see about me, that I'm a black man.
Hmm.
And so that's, to me, is something that's important because black men aren't seen in the most positive light
Hmm.
at all in the world. No matter what we do, we always have to prove, the extra step and go the extra distance just to prove our worthiness. At least that's my view.
Hmm.
Um, but I just feel like it's really important to stand up for that and recognize the joy and the beauty in being a black man. Where
Yeah.
we're often criticized and put down to the bottom of the barrel, and I have to stand up and use my voice to speak up for that.
I love it. That is excellent. So, getting into your work in the birth space. So, obviously, you mentioned your mom a minute ago, and I was definitely going to bring her up because she clearly has had an influence in some way in her footsteps as being in a birth worker and being a doula and working with Black Mothers United. So, Tell us a little bit about your mom's influence and her work and how that has connected, obviously, to you and what you're currently doing.
Absolutely. Well, when I was younger, pretty much like around high school, my mom, she'd be the one that'd be picking my transportation. So I'd have to ride around with her with whatever she was doing. And a lot of that
Mm-hmm.
riding around was with clients that she was seeing, taking them to appointments, or sometimes we would luck out and it would be an actual birth. There were quite a few times
Mm,
that that happened. And as that started to happen more, I got, I think, more connected to birth in a way that I started to understand a little bit,
mm-hmm.
because I was always wanting to be at births in my family, and I didn't understand that either. I just thought
Mm.
it was just something that was we did as a family. When someone was having a
Right.
baby, we all go, right?
Mm,
We
right,
all there, and we
right.
all go support, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so watching her and her service into the community, I just really think it struck something in me, and that I carried with me throughout, even my younger adult life, maybe not directly doing birth work, but being of service
Mm-hmm.
to the community.
Mm-hmm.
And even now, where she's at, my sister works with her as well, and so it's
Oh,
just this
wow.
complete family affair. And I have a cousin that works there, and so there's this connection, I think, that we all share, in that we see what's happening in our community when it comes to
Mm-hmm.
birth, and we're
Mm-hmm.
wanting to make that change and and have a positive impact on the birthing community, as not just as Black people, but
Right.
as
Mm-hmm.
people.
Mm-hmm. And, and that's a really unique experience, though, right? Because most of us weren't going after school to see a birth happening, right? Like, a lot of us didn't have that unique experience happening, and you did. And so, at that time, do you remember ever talking or hearing about, Black maternal death rates, or, was there conversation around, were there a lot of Black doulas at that time? Like, do you remember that being a part of the talk in the family?
I don't remember that at all, and I think um, I might have just been blind to that at the time. I think we're all kind of programmed to to think and think a certain way about things, because or
Mm-hmm.
the way that we've been raised, or the way that we've been brought up. But it's really until we shake that things start to
Mm-hmm.
change for us. And I think I just wasn't in tune with that at the time.
Yeah. And so now, being in this space, and like I said, it's being a family business and a family affair. Why do you think there is such, I guess, a lack of representation still in doula and birth work across the country?
I just think it's not as respected as
Hmm.
some of the other people um, that have a function in birth. I won't
Hmm.
say they work in birth. I won't say they do birth work. I just, especially when it comes to like being in the hospital and stuff, you are treated a certain way as a doula.
Hmm.
And that's, I think, purely because, you don't have the higher credentials that, the nurse
Hmm.
and the
Hmm.
doctor have, and the midwife. And I think that there are, in little ways, they always remind you of that.
Really? Really?
Oh yeah,
Mm.
you should be a nurse, and it's like,
Oh,
I
wow.
like being a doula,
Right, right, right. I'm doing what I want to
I'm
do.
doing what I love to do,
Right. Hmm.
and so I don't think it's maybe always intentional, but it's there,
Sure.
and that
Hmm.
says something.
Hmm. Hmm. Once again, something else that I had not heard before. You just mentioned that, and talking to a couple other doulas in the past, we haven't discussed that, but I'm glad that you brought that up. Um, do you feel like there is, I guess, a space of, I don't know, trying to close that gap, right? The gap between healthcare, individuals and people who are birth workers, because obviously there's a need for doulas and birth care in that space that they cannot do. So, how do you try to close that gap, or can you close that gap between their perception of what you all are doing and the importance of what you all are doing?
I just think when you do the work, it will
Mm-hmm.
speak. It will speak for itself. I think, when people see doulas being a great asset for these
Mm-hmm.
birthing people, it can, I think, be intimidating for other people who are working around that.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so I just think that that's a natural reaction to that. But um, doing the work, if I be great, people will see that
Right.
greatness, and they can't
Mm-hmm.
deny. You won't be able to deny. They're not going to be able to deny that.
Absolutely. And so, in regards to your work, you mentioned a little bit about, why you kind of have created this space and the doodad, but was there a light bulb moment or a moment when you knew, okay, this is exactly what I need to do, when all the stars aligned, if you will?
I think I will say in the most blessed way that I am constantly reminded of that every day.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a blessing. But one of the moments that sticks out to me was I was doing an episode of my Instagram series Spilled Milk, which has kind of
Mm-hmm.
been on a hiatus, but I was doing it with an all male cast.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there was a future midwife, a doula, or a future midwife, and two doulas, two male doulas. And one of them said that they got started because they saw me, and
Oh, wow.
it was this weird thing of like, wait, what? Like I hadn't even really been branding and doing it on my own for that long, and I just thought, even looking back at that moment to see
Mm-hmm.
how many more male doulas I've seen since then, not to
Mm.
take the credit for that, to say that's because of me at all. It's not. It's just to say that I see it changing, and I think that to be a part of that change is just the
Yeah.
most amazing feeling ever.
I mean, but let's give you some credit though. To your point, right? Like, we don't, but I feel like that you have clearly had an influence on, as you mentioned, someone seeing you. You may not have ever connected with them or anything else, but they saw you and said, okay, there's a space there for that. So I just want to, give flowers where flowers are due.
Thank
But
you.
yeah, because like I said, once again, even though I am not in the birth working space, I pray to be in the space where I need a doula and a birth worker, and to just have a variety of options, you know what I mean? And to have that frame of mind that does not automatically assume it's going to be a female, that even has an influence on me, and talking to someone else about it, and kind of spreading that word, so then changing the perception of that. So it all makes a large impact and influence on just not the work of it, but also who is looking for that kind of work and that service. It reminds me of, on social, you'll see the post about, someone says, oh, I went to the doctor today and, X, Y, and Z happened. They'll say, oh, what did he say? And it's like, you assumed it was a man. It's kind of the
Mm-hmm.
same vein. Like if someone says, oh, my doula's so great, we did X, Y, and Z, I probably would say, oh, who is she? Versus, well, who are they? So it all makes a difference. So the work you're doing is making an impact.
Thank
But I
you.
want to, yeah, you're welcome. I want to jump into something I think I saw you speak about on another either show or panel that I think you mentioned on your Instagram page, and it was misandry and birth work. And
Yes.
so, first of all, I had to do a quick word search and be like, let me just make sure I know exactly what this word means. Because I was like, I mean, we all know what misogyny is, whatever else, but like misandry, I don't hear very often. So I had to do a quick Google search. But misandry is the hatred or contempt for or prejudice against men. And so it is on a form of discrimination. And so talk to us about how that appears, and how you have seen that over the course of, I'm sure, years now in your workspace and in birth work.
Absolutely. Early on in my career, it manifested in fears and insecurities about even becoming a doula or being in birth work because of the things
Mm-hmm.
people had told me, or the
Mm-hmm.
things I had heard, or the way that I had been treated in the birth room previously.
Mm-hmm.
And even up until now, currently, it's become such an important part of my mission because I face it as a doula currently.
Mm-hmm.
I face it all the time, whether it's in spaces that are um, largely women centered or working with clients. I mean, I get so many, and I'm just being transparent.
Yeah.
There are still so many people who will reject me as a doula strictly because I'm a male.
Mm-hmm.
They're
Mm-hmm.
not quote unquote comfortable working with a male doula, or their partner is not comfortable having another male in the room,
Mm.
but they'll turn around and go to a male OB. But
I
that's none of
was
my
about to
business.
say, I was about to just say that. I was like, but we have all these male OBs all up in your business, every month. But yeah, not my concern, I guess. But that makes a lot of sense. Like, why is that the case?
And even if it's not a male OB or an issue like that, it
Mm-hmm.
kind of stems from this sexualization of
Mm.
the body parts that we have been ingrained with, in that we can't see each other's, the fact that we still cover
Right.
up women's or female identified persons' breasts and chest. Why are
Mm-hmm.
those still blurred out when a man can take off his
Right.
shirt and show the pecs and nipples?
Right. Right. Right.
It's still prevalent. That fact alone lets you know that
Mm.
misandry is still prevalent, heavily prevalent in birth work, because there's this layer of sexualization about it, and
Mm.
it's kind of ridiculous.
It is.
But I'm happy to report and say that I have seen a change, and I'm seeing more couples, um, and I say that to differentiate couples wanting to work with male doulas. I'm
Mm-hmm.
seeing more female identified people wanting to work with male doulas. And so I
Mm-hmm.
see the change happening. And, I will be very much happy to look back one day and say, I think I had a hand in that.
Absolutely. But yeah, I mean, to all those points, and like I said, we have male doctors, we have male specialists, we have male surgeons, and all of those, they are able to kind of be welcomed into the intimate parts of our body because they're there to do a job, and to help you and to, do all of those things. And how are you any different? And I don't know if it's, like you said, the sexualization, that's definitely part of it. If it's the credentials part of it, I don't know what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a really good point to make, in that it really is no different when someone is there to serve you, do a job, help you to do one of the greatest miracles of all time. Um, you know, it just seems, like you said, a little bit silly when you kind of compare it against, you could have literally a male OB, helping you bring this child into the world, literally in your uppermost parts. And, how is that any different than having someone who's there to support you and be there even, before, during, and after, your prayerfully healthy delivery. So it's very interesting. Once again, a topic that had not come across, that I'm glad that you're able to bring to light and educate me and everyone else who is not, so closely intimate with that space of birth work. Um, so adding another layer, right? So we have male, we have Black male, we have queer, we have masculine. All of these things are a part of your identity. And so tell me why to you it's so important to have that type of representation in the birth space.
It's, you know, for me, it's just about making sure that there's everybody for somebody,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
I think that I go back to my whole reason for doing this is it's, to amplify the voices of masculine identified persons in the birth space. And that's
Mm-hmm.
all masculine identified, people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm starting to see, more and more um, Black fathers step up and be
Mm-hmm.
involved in birth. And I'm seeing all these, Black father doulas pop up. And I just think that to me is one of the most beautiful things ever. I
Yeah.
think representation matters, and it's important to make sure that everybody knows that. And when I say everybody, I mean everybody.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so when you do look back, and I know you've mentioned a couple of times already, and if you ever retire from this space or pass the torch or whatever it looks like for you, what do you hope you will be able to see in the diversifying of birth work?
Um, I just, I see it happening, which is a beautiful thing. But I
Mm-hmm.
just would love to see the doors open up and the barriers come down, you know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There's there is this kind of protectiveness around birth work, which I understand
Mm-hmm.
because it is such a sacred space, and
Mm-hmm.
I get that. You know, but there's definitely enough room for all of us, and
Mm-hmm.
I love the fact that the people that I've experienced working with, for the most part, have all been so welcoming to me,
Yeah.
because of the unique things about me, and being able to have platforms and spaces to speak about that. It
Mm-hmm.
lets you know that there are people who want you there, or want to hear what you have to say, and want to share space with you. And so I just, like I said, would love to see more doors open
Mm-hmm.
for people in birth work,
Mm-hmm.
particularly masculine identified people. Um, we've seen this, like, especially during COVID, this tear down kind
Mm-hmm.
of where partners weren't even being allowed into prenatals and some of the birth
Yeah.
spaces, which is absolutely ridiculous and
Yeah.
uh, not okay. So
Right.
I just would love to see some of those barriers come down, and barriers for our people. The mortality rates for Black and Brown people, primarily
Mm-hmm.
Black people, have
Mm-hmm.
increased during this time, and that's a setback for us. And we need to take a look at that and say, what are we doing to
Mm-hmm.
contribute to those factors? What is contributing to those factors, and how can we change that?
Yeah. Absolutely. And so, talk to us about the Doudad. How did you come up with this amazing creative title? And tell us about what you do.
Well, I'm all about a little zinger, or like I've,
It's so cute.
worked in creative spaces for quite some time in my life, but the
Mm-hmm.
doodad is a double entendre of the word doula, which we all know is a support person, and
Mm-hmm.
the word doodad, which is like a knickknack, or an innate object whose name we can't remember. Hand me that deer. It's something we say for something that we can't remember.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a feeling that resonated in me about how I had felt sometimes being around birth and being in the birth room, and the feeling that some of the people I was working with were sharing with me as well, that how they were being treated as partners
Mm-hmm.
or as support people.
Mm-hmm.
And so I combined those two, and it kind of works in that, it's birth work and it plays on that. And I love it.
I love it. It's
Thank
so
you.
cute.
Thank you.
So tell us about your services, and if someone wants to reach out and contact you and all of that good stuff, how could they find you, and what makes the Doudad, a safe space for people to come and get services for, their upcoming miracle.
Definitely. You can always find me on Instagram at the Doodad, my website, www.thedoodad.com. I just launched a YouTube channel, the Doodad TV. So I'm going to be uploading some of the past speeches and discussions and chats I've had, and some past episodes from my Instagram show, Spilled Milk, and the Hot Chocolate Chronicles.
Mm.
So yeah, you can just I'm always I'm not one of those people who has a team working for him. If you reach out to me, you will be talking to me, and I really try to do my best to interact and keep up with people who are trying to get in touch with me, and wanting me to come and speak, and be a part of their events and activities and everything. So but that's a beautiful thing too, to have this all happening. Having done some bursts, during COVID, is a blessing as well.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm here. The Doodad is here and available for people, for the community, for my people, for everyone, spreading that Black boy joy all over the world.
I love it. I love it. I love it. Thank you for, like I said, educating us. Thank you for bringing to light some things that I think need to be discussed in multiple communities. And then just for also just shining a little bit of a light of who you are with Fertility Ain't Fair. Thank you. And yes, y'all, he responded directly. So I was like reaching out thinking it was going to be some robot or some, assistant or something like that. But no, it was him. So please reach out, connect with Jessie, and just thank you again for the work that you're doing. And just know that we are here to support you. So thank you so much for hopping into Fertility Ain't Fair.
Thank you, Brittany, and thank you for the work you're doing, and thank you for providing this space and platform for not just me, but for all other birth workers and people who love birth to share our love with you. And thank you.
This was one of the most amazing conversations I've had thus far, I think, on this podcast. No doubt they all have been amazing in their own way, but talking about things like being Black and masculine and queer in birth work were things that I had not yet discussed, thought about, or really even come across. And so thank you again to Jessie for tapping in with Fertility Ain't Fair, connecting with us and giving us a really, really amazing insight as to what you see, what you're living, and what you're doing. So you already know I have my 3 top takeaways from this episode. Okay. Number 1, representation and diversity matters for birth workers, for doulas. Like, find your person, find your people, build your birth team. We've discussed this before on other episodes with doulas and doulas of color, but once again, adding an additional layer to the diversifying of being in the doula and birth working space with Jessie and his business and who he is as an individual was just eye-opening. And so I really think we have to have an open mind, like I said, when it comes to it, even if it's not for you, right? Having an open mind when it comes to your birthing team is really, really important. And also to be able to give that to somebody else, right? And so if it's not for you, find your people. But if someone else needs someone like a Jessie or needs someone else in their birthing circle to fit their needs, like, have an open mind to be able to relay that to somebody else who needs it. Okay. Number 2, put some respect on these doulas. Like, I was so glad that Jessie spoke on his experience as a birth worker and what I will call direct and or indirect shade, if you will, by medical professionals, like, due to a doula's lack of, medical credentials. Like, if you are someone who has chosen a doula or birth worker to be a part of your experience, like, advocate for them. Like, in that room, advocate for them prior to, going into labor. Talk to your medical team about how this person's going to be a part of your experience in the room with you. Like, give them that heads up. If they are able to come to your appointments with you, like, I don't know how that works, but like, if they are, like, have them be a part of that, because there just has to be a newfound level of respect for what doulas and birth workers do and bring to our space, especially a people of color, to really help that process and prayerfully continue to, reduce infant and birthing mortalities, especially with women of color. So put some respect on them, period, poo. Number 3, you never know how your life will align. So he spoke about, being around thirst growing up, going with his mom after school, and wanting to be around different births in his family. And so he mentioned he never thought of or knew that it would lead to him actually being, in birth work and having his own business. And so it's a side note, right? But it's so true. Like, you never know how things will align. You never know how certain interests will peak in your life and become part of your life's work and legacy. So just keeping those things in mind. Our journeys are, for a lot of us, all over the place when it comes to this thing called fertility. And so just keeping an open mind to, things to align, right? Whether it's in this journey or in career or relationship, whatever it is, like things will eventually align in a way that you may or may not ever thought or you know, asked for or designed possible. So all good things. But Jessie, you are a part of our family now, Fertility Ain't Fair. So thank you for being open, honest, and transparent on your journey as well. So what else we have? Until next time, we are your forever friends in fertility. Check us out on social media at Fertility Ain't Fair on IG and Facebook. Go to our website, get some merchandise, get you your own My Fertility Ain't Fair journal on Amazon right now. And that's all I got. So I will check in with you guys on the next episode of Fertility Ain't Fair. And until then, stay hopeful.